proud to be in the military. Our enemy was on foreign shores. They come here. Our Constitution used to mean something. It didn't mean how our money was going to get spent. It meant that it wasn't going to be spent. We weren't going to be taxed for these purposes. Those are the things that we need to get back to. Those are the things that our founding fathers said. We're not supposed to be involved in that. That's a state issue. That's what I bring to this race. I'm going to Washington to say no, not just to Democrats, but to Republicans also. This has got to stop. We need to fix the problem.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. So, as I said in the beginning, we're going to start off with just a few questions that were submitted by members of the Fox Valley Initiative to kind of set the tone. And we ask that you take a couple minutes, give us your response, and then we'll just alternate people on how we alternate who starts first. So let's go on. The first one is, obviously, one of our group's main concerns is how the Constitution is or isn't being applied these days. So the first question would be, how would you use the Constitution to evaluate legislation that would come before you in the House of Representatives?
Where's my timekeeper? John is? Okay. How do I use the Constitution? Well, I don't think I would ever not use it. I think it is my guiding principle. I've studied it all my life at the master's degree from Northern Illinois University, where I grew up in Northern Illinois. It's about as much of a guiding document as there ever has been created in the world. It is what makes our country great. And so those principles are clearly defined. They're out there for all to see, and they're the type of document that can never be changed. It can be amended, but those principles are principles that last forever. John Adams is my personal hero. I found him in the book stacks at college when I was 18 years old. I've studied him ever since. I think he's one of the unsung heroes. He's gotten a little bit better press in the last few years with the DVD and the David McCullough book, but he is by far the most serious founding father, I believe. And he was constantly referring to the Constitution that he helped create as the basis for all the law giving that he tried to administer as president. So it by far should be our guiding light in Washington. It isn't now. It obviously isn't now. We have radicals in Washington that disregard the Constitution. I think that that will change when we get back to power.
Thanks, Mark. Let me read something to you. This is from Thomas Jefferson. On every question of construction, let us carry ourselves back to the time when the Constitution was adopted. Recollect the spirit manifested in the debates, and instead of trying what may be squeezed out of the text or invented against it, conform to the probable one in which it was passed. The answer to your question is that's what I plan on doing. Because you have to look at what the intent was and the historical context of when that document was written. And if you don't understand history, or you can't go back there and find out what the original construct was, you shouldn't be in the House of Representatives. I'm asking you to send me to the same halls that John Adams served in, that Abraham Lincoln served in, and Thomas Jefferson served in. It's an important task. And the fact that all of you are here gives witness and testimony to how important this really is. You know, every single congressman, they take an oath when they sit down, when they first go to Washington, D.C., to defend and honor this document. And then they never look at it again. This document will be in my heart and in my mind on every piece of legislation. It restricts, rightly so, what our country can do and what our federal government can do. It's the check and balance that needs to be put back in. And if you don't think elections matter, I will just say this. Sonia Sotomayor, elections matter.
How would I use the Constitution to evaluate legislation? You're getting pretty much the same answers up here, folks. We're all conservative up here. We all believe in the Constitution. We all admit that we will uphold it to the best of our ability. But the truth is, and let's get serious about this, there's legislation out there that we do like, that the federal government should not be passing. We have to say no to the people within our own party. It's easy to say no to the other side. How about when I say no to something that everybody says, yeah, that's a good idea? This isn't about right or left. It's about our anarchy and tyranny. We have to have the ability to balance our government with our needs for freedom. That's what the Constitution is for. That is what you're going to send someone to Washington for. We have to be able to say no. Few pieces of legislation should actually be passed. Few pieces of legislation should be able to get past that guardian. The guardian is our Constitution. If men were angels, we wouldn't need a government. When a government chooses winners and losers, that's when our government does us the biggest crisscross. It's not a square deal if we're passing legislation that makes winners and losers. Quite frankly, the Constitution should be guiding every single moment of our life when you're out there on the hill. The fact is at that point, you are serving the people. You are not serving your country. You are not serving yourself. You are not there to make a living. You are not there to gain power. You are serving the people. And the fact is for those 2 years that you've been elected, that Constitution should be your life.
These days has been target, stimulus, cash for clunkers. Everything seems to be piling up. Money is being spent in Washington faster than we can even absorb. It's hard for people to understand the amount of dollars that are coming out of Washington and what's really behind it. So I think one of the most important things that I've heard from people is their concern over this type of spending. So how would you address the fiscal irresponsibility of previous Congresses in creating a national debt of now $12 trillion, a federal deficit this year alone of $1.5 trillion, and projected annual deficits of a trillion or more dollars for the foreseeable future? And then on top of all that, you have the unfunded liabilities for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid of over $50 trillion. Makes you wonder why you guys want this job to begin with. But how would you go about addressing this? Reed?
We've got ourselves in a real problem. And the government has, through the last, since Roosevelt, and you could go before them a little bit, had created promises and had made promises to people that people are now making decisions on and are living. I want to speak a little bit first to the stimulus package. I kind of call the stimulus package a cash for clunkers for the whole economy. Because in reality, the government can only get money from three places, right? Well, they can tax it, get money by taxing it. They can get money by borrowing it. And they can get money by a click of a mouse and printing it. All three of those solutions are bad. And I can just see the administration and the folks that have approved the stimulus package scratching their heads, wondering why we're not creating jobs. Well, when you shift money from one sector to another sector, this sector goes down and this sector goes up. Because that's what Andy was saying a moment ago, picking winners and losers. And Franklin Roosevelt was a master at it. Now it looks like Barack Obama's pretty good at it. It lends itself toward patronage. We have to get the government out of the business of removing risk from business. If any business owner is protected from risk, they will take risks that's unreasonable. And so if you wonder why General Motors doesn't really care whether it works, well, they started with $37 billion, and then the government said, well, we're going to let you go bankrupt, and then the government took over the company and gave it to the union. And when you remove risk, then business owners make bad decisions. There has to be a consequence for every decision that any business makes.